Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Anna, and as you can tell by the title of this video, my reading year has been rough to say the least, and I still have not, I kid you not, I still have not found a 5-star read, which to me is just insane because it's not like I give a lot of 5-star ratings. I am very picky with the books that I do give a 5 stars, but I always usually find 5 stars in like February, March, or April, but it is currently May and I still have no 5 stars ahead, and I have read 13 books, which is insane to me that out of 13 books, I still have not found a 5 stars, and I'm not counting with the 3 volumes that I did read of The Promised Neverland. I actually filmed a reading vlog for that one, so if you want to check it out, please do, and of course those volumes were 5 stars. It's very easy for me to give a manga 5 stars because there is just always something happening. It's always the continuation of a story, so to me, it is very easy to give 5 stars to a manga, but to an actual novel, no 5 stars. No 5 stars, crickets, I don't know where it is, where it can be found. So let's just do a quick recap of the 13 books that I've read this year and why none of them have been 5 stars. So the first book that I finished in 2026 was Empire of Dawn by Jay Kristoff. This is the last installment in the Empire of Vampire series, and I wasn't really expecting this one to be a 5 stars because the second one was actually a disappointment for me. I gave it 3 stars, so I wasn't really expecting the last book to be 5 stars because the first one also wasn't 5 stars, but I actually did enjoy this one quite more than the second book. I gave this book 4 stars. It was solid, but the reason why I didn't really give it the full 5-star rating, it's because it had one of those tropes that I just absolutely hate, because you know, our main character, he is narrating the story, right? So he told a lie to us. You know, he completely lied to us, and Jay Kristoff made it seem like the ending was much more tragic than it actually was, with a lot of our characters dying, you know, just characters that we absolutely loved, and I generally thought, you know, they had all died, but alas, that is not really the case, and I was a little bit disappointed at that because I expected much more consequences, and in my opinion, this ended way too good, you know what I'm saying? Because this is a dark fantasy, you know, we are exploring vampires, and these vampires are not like the Twilight vampires, okay? They are very gruesome, they are vile, they are cruel, they have no mercy upon humans whatsoever, they truly see us as just food. So I was expecting, you know, a much harsher ending due to just the themes of this book in general and the tone of this book, but no, and that's why I just couldn't give it the full 5 stars, because even though I enjoyed the ending, I just expected a lot more consequences. And then the second book I read was actually from a Portuguese author, which was War Unlimited by Mário Pereira. And this one, it kind of disappointed me. I'm not going to lie, I gave this one 2 stars. It just did not work for me. I still believe and I still say that this book should have been rewritten because there was just a lot of world building that was not explored. And as you know, I completely enjoy world building. I love when the author just explores the world, tells us about everything, just shows us everything. And I really do think this book needed a lot more world building, a lot more explaining. I do think the pacing of the story was off because there were some moments that dragged on for too long. There were moments that everything just happened way too fast, and not only that, we do focus too much on the main character, which is Mario, and we needed the other characters because we do have other POVs in this book, but we just didn't get them as much. And I understand because the author did contact me and he did tell me, like, yes, in the next books, you know, you're going to see a lot more world building, a lot more about the lore, about the other characters. I understand that, but I do think as the first book, we should have a ground, you know, basis of how the world works, its lore, and how the magic system works, and I don't have that grasp. You know, I just don't know. I just don't know how anything works, what happened, and in my opinion, you should have that as the first book of a trilogy, and so that is why I do say this book needed to be rewritten. But nonetheless, I understand why some Portuguese authors have, you know, some, reluctance, there we go. They are reluctant into writing long books, because here in Portugal, long books do not sell, which is very unfortunate, so the authors try to keep it as short as possible. I think this book only has 300 pages. Let me check. Okay, no, actually it does have 420, but still, to me, that is very short. I don't know why. It just felt so short for what it wanted to accomplish, you know? And then I read 2 books by the same author, and I'm just going to talk about both of these, which was The Citron Key by L.L. McRae and The Iron Crown by the same author. So The Citron Key is kind of like the prequel to the entire trilogy, and The Iron Crown is the first book in the trilogy. And these books, they just disappointed me. I'm not going to lie, because I gave each 3 stars. They're not bad by any means. You know, they're not bad. The writing is actually good, but what didn't convince me was the narrative itself. And this is my fault, because this has to do with personal preference, and the premise just didn't seem as interesting in the first place, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot, and it really wasn't interesting to me. So I explained this in probably my April wrap-up, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I really enjoyed the world building in this book because, like I said previously, the dragon spirits and everything that has to do with them, I just think it was so original and unique, having, you know, dragon spirits in different points of the land, in the mountains, in the oceans, in small lakes, forests, and then being the protectors of that territory and habitat. And they are not nice, okay? They are dragons, so they're not going to be nice. They can either curse you or bless you. So I really just enjoyed this idea. The problem was the premise, especially for the first book. It's just memory loss is not my thing, okay? It's not my thing. I'm not a fan of it, and now I really know that I am not a fan of memory loss whatsoever, and that's why the story to me just wasn't interesting, because I was bored all of the time, because our character, Fen, the one that suffers from memory loss, it's very hard to connect with him because he doesn't have his memories, so he doesn't really have a personality as well. And I understand that it has to be the case, because if you really don't remember who you are, where you came from, if you have family, friends, hobbies, whatever, you're obviously not going to have a personality. But that just made it even harder, because then the other characters didn't compensate for how bored I was with Fen. And that's why I say, you know, it was just a case of this story was not for me. It has nothing to do with the world building, with the writing, none of that. It purely is because the premise is just not for me. And then I read another book that I thought was going to be a 5 stars, but it wasn't, which is She Who Became the Sun by Shirley Parker Chan. And let me tell you, I was so disappointed with this book because I gave it 3 stars in the end. And the main issue with me was the writing. The writing was not there for me. I did not like it. It felt clunky. And I understand that we do need to have some time jumps. I understand that, but it felt clunky. It wasn't done properly. It felt like, wow, we were jumping from one point to another. And then we had different POVs, and I was not expecting those POVs. And, you know, I usually don't mind stories with multiple POVs. I actually prefer multiple POVs, but because we spend so much time with our main character, which is Zhu, I think that's her name, I was only expecting to see her, and I was only interested in her and in her journey. And when the other 2 characters showed up, it made sense, but it was also like the author was repeating the same message over and over again, and that was also another issue, was the theme. I do enjoy the theme. I enjoy the theme and the talk about greatness and what we have to do in order to be great, who can be deemed great in this world, you know, because Zhu, she had to pretend to be her older brother, she had to pretend to be a man in order to be taken seriously. So I do understand all of that, and I love the conversation and the debate about it. The problem was the author repeated the same things over and over and over again, and I just got tired. Like, I literally just got tired of it, because I kid you not, in every single chapter she reminded us of why Zhu was doing what she was doing. It was because she wanted to be great. She wanted to be next to the greats. She wanted to live a life of greatness, just like her older brother was destined to have, you know. So it was just boring, because I was like, I get it. Like, I get it. You don't need to repeat the same thing over and over again. And I was expecting a little bit more magic, you know, because I thought this was a little bit more fantastical, but it isn't. But that is my fault, okay? That is my fault. That has nothing to do with the book in and of itself. I should have done my research better. But the main thing truly was the writing and how the author just kept repeating the same thing over and over again. And also, I just couldn't really connect with Zhu as a main character. I don't know what was going on. And to this day, I still don't really know why I was so put off by her, but I just could not connect with her in any way, shape, or form, or with the other characters, which made the book just a simple meh. And then I went on to read a middle grade book, which is Skandar and the Unicorn Thieves. I love unicorns. If you did not know, I absolutely love unicorns. But I don't usually read a lot of books with unicorns in them, because they usually don't have the depiction that I want them to have, or they just end up being very YA or childish and middle grade. But still, I decided to read this one, and I gave it 2 stars. It was not for me at all. Here's the thing. I absolutely love the way the unicorns were depicted, because these are not cute unicorns. They are wild, they are savage, they are carnivores, so they are mean unicorns, and I really love that, because it is just different from what we usually get with unicorns. So I really did appreciate that, and I love the magic system with the elements. You know me, I love the elements. Who doesn't love it? You know, who doesn't love a good old water, fire, air, earth? We all love those elements, and I absolutely loved it as well. The problem was the story. You know, whenever it comes to middle grade, I feel like the pacing is just so freaking fast, because you need to get the child's attention constantly, and that just means to keep the plot going, and there's always stuff happening one after another, and I just found that I didn't really have too much time to process anything that was happening to Skandar, because everything, you know, that happened to him is traumatic. Like, I'm not even kidding you. It's traumatic what this child had to go through and what he went through in this book. So I just really miss those downtime moments of having time to process things. I understand, because this is a middle grade, so I don't think children have that thing where they need to process everything, but I really miss that, you know, seeing him process everything. And with his friends, we just barely spent any time as a group. And it was kind of hard to believe that they were just, these best friends, that we were going to do anything for Skandar, because obviously Skandar, he is a special kid, because in this world you have 5 elements, and the 5th one being spirit. And they had forbidden spirit from entering the academy because the main villain in this book is a user of the spirit magic. That's his element. So the school just literally decided, we're going to ban anyone that has a spirit element. In fact, we are going to murder them. So of course, Skandar, he has that element. And right off the bat, we just have a few colleagues that decide to protect him and to protect his life and to help him enter the Unicorn Academy, so he can become a unicorn rider. And to me, it was just a little bit like, okay, but why are you helping him? Like, this is something very, very severe that you are doing. And you might think, oh my god, this is middle grade, but I think they were, 13, 14 years old? I do think you have some sense in your head. But, I'm not going to be too harsh. It just really wasn't for me because, like I said, the main thing truly was processing everything, and I just wanted more downtime with his friends. And then I read A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and honestly, I did enjoy this book. This was a 3.5 stars, but I could have enjoyed it much more if the main character wasn't that aggravating. So in the beginning, our main character, Elle, she is just very, very arrogant. And I can honestly understand that because she is very good. Her magic is amazing. She is very, very powerful, especially in the deathly, magic. All of her magic is kind of dark, so it's very, very dangerous for her to use. She has to learn how to control it. And I do understand why you would be arrogant if you're one of the best. But the thing is, she is so arrogant, and she is constantly being saved by this one guy, which his name is Orion, and I hated that. I hated the fact that she kept on being saved, and I couldn't really see her abilities and how she can really defend herself because of this. I do understand that she can't really use her magic because, like I said, it is very deadly, and she can kill multiple people around her. It's very dangerous. Whenever she uses magic, it's usually something big, something that is going to harm everyone else. So I understand that she doesn't use the magic, but God, you are so smart. Why do you keep being saved by this Orion and then you're so arrogant and annoying to everyone else? I do understand where it came from, and she did get better throughout the book. Thank God she did have some personal growth in her, which, I'm very, very happy for, and that's why I give it a 3.5 stars. I do understand this behavior because this is a very deadly school. You enter this school and there are no teachers, no employees, nobody. It's just the students. And you have to survive in this school because this school is surrounded by monsters. And a lot of students are killed during the years that they are studying there. So it is a very dangerous school. You always have to keep on high alert. And it's kind of aggravating because in this school, I could not be in this school. I'm telling y'all, I could not be in here because you have to constantly look at your food. You have to constantly make sure you have a good exit plan. You have to constantly look, in the showers, in the toilets, and you constantly have to walk around with someone else because if you walk alone, you're an easy prey. So I love that about the school. I would not love to be there, but I really loved and enjoyed the setting because of that. I did feel the tension. I did feel, the survival and how everyone was just always on their feet. Everyone was just always on high alert. And I understand that's why, a lot of people don't really make friends. They're not really nice to each other. And that's why Elle wasn't really nice to anyone else because you also cannot trust everyone. So I did understand that, but it was quite annoying. It really was annoying to see how arrogant she was. And that's why this book just really didn't get more than 3.5 stars. I also read The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, and this one was actually a 4-star. It really wasn't a 5-star, and the reason for that is because in the middle, it got a little bit too boring. This book is sort of like thriller-esque mystery because we follow this young woman, and she spends her days helping her father run a very antique bookshop. They sell very antique books, and one of her hobbies is actually writing biographies on dead authors. But one day, she gets a letter from one of the famous, authors in this world, which is called Vida Winter. Nobody really knows anything about her. She is very mysterious, and she decides to contact this young lady, our main protagonist, so she can write her biography. And at first she's like, I only write biographies on dead people. Like, why are you asking me? But then she does accept because Vida Winter, she is very famous author in this world. She has written, the 13th Tales, but there's a mystery because the 13th Tale is not, it's published, but it's published just, blank pages. So it has never been fully published. They only have 12 tales, and the 13th, is just blank pages. Nobody really knows what it is. So our main character does go to her home, Vida Winter. We find out that she is dying, and that's why she she wants to tell her story and finally tell the world who she actually is. And it's very deranged, let me tell you, because it all starts with the Englefield family. And it all started with a couple, the mother passed away when she had their daughter. They already had a son, an older son, and then she had the daughter, and she passed away due to her birth. So the husband, he was very disturbed by this because he loved his wife so much, and he just, literally locked himself, and he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't sleep, he wouldn't do anything until one of the servants actually shoved the baby girl into his hands, like, no, like, this is your child, you should take care of it. And then he looks at her and he sees, his dead wife, because obviously they're going to be very similar. So now he found this new purpose, and he exclusively loves that one child. So the oldest son has always been neglected, and he does whatever the freak he wants. And let me tell you, that is not good, because this boy is twisted. I'm telling you, this boy is twisted. He enjoys pain way too much, provoking pain on others way too much as well. And it starts from here, because then these two families, they develop a very, let's just say, disturbing relationship. Okay, they really develop a disturbing relationship, and there are twins that come from this relationship. And these two twins, they are just not normal twins, let me tell you, because they were always neglected as well. Because obviously the parents, which are, siblings, the father, he never really cared about anyone except his sister. And when his sister just disappeared, he was so distraught, he neglected his children once more. So the twins never really had any education whatsoever, and it goes on from here, and I really don't want to say any more. The twins are just, weird. They don't even speak a normal language. They speak a language invented by them that only they can understand. So if you do enjoy the weird twin trope, you're going to love this book as well. And like I said, the middle just became a little bit too boring, because the plot wasn't really moving forward. The mystery wasn't moving forward. But the beginning and the end, stunning, 10 out of 10. And the writing of this author, also 10 out of 10. I absolutely loved the writing. It was gorgeous. I wish I could write this way, I swear to God. But, it just wasn't really anything special. And I think if the middle hadn't been so boring, it could have been a 5-star, because let me tell you, I was obsessed when I was reading this book. And then we have I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jenna McCurdy, and this was, just my very first try at something completely different, completely out of my comfort zone, which was a biography, and I enjoyed it. I give it a 4 stars, and the reason why, it's because, I did mention this briefly in my April wrap-up. I just thought it was too repetitive, and I know it's strange to say this because this is somebody's life, so they do have, of course, the control to add whatever they want to add, and I'm not here to criticize anybody's life by any means whatsoever, but it did feel a little bit repetitive. I do understand why she did it, because she truly wanted to show a pattern in her life with her mother, and the way that they just had this weird relationship, and how her mother really didn't care about her or about anyone else but herself and her desires and her dreams. So I do understand that, but it just felt too repetitive for me. But I was also obsessed with this book. Like, I just could not stop reading this, because one, I just could not believe someone's life was like this. I just could not believe that someone's mother would do this to their own child. It's just crazy what that woman put Jenna McCurdy through. I am so glad that she's doing so much better now. But that was the main reason why I didn't give this book 5 stars. And it does seem a little bit weird to even evaluate this book. I don't know why. I don't even know if I should evaluate it or not, because this is a biography. This is somebody's life, so I don't know. But it does feel good to give it a 4 stars, And following the trend of reading outside of my comfort zone, I also read Por Amor de Madalena, another Portuguese author by Lara Fresco. And this one is a romance book, but it is, I don't want to say it's dark romance in the sense of like dark romance and, people stalking you. No, not that type of dark romance. What I mean by dark romance is that this does deal with domestic violence. So the theme is very, very important. And I actually loved how it was debated and how the signs are so very clear, because I do think it is very important for young people, especially young women, to read this book and to see the early signs. So I did appreciate how obvious the signs were, because sometimes it's not so obvious in real life. But, because this is something so out of my comfort zone, it was just okay. I give this a 3.5 stars, again, because I do think the theme is very important and it should be discussed a lot more. But I wasn't interested in the other part of the romance, because of course Madalena, she understands that she is in an abusive relationship, and she does end up meeting someone else, and a romance sparks between her and another guy. And that's just the part that I really didn't care, because I was like, okay, yeah, like romance is just really not for me. I don't really find you guys that cute. But I did enjoy, also how the author described college life. It just seems so whimsical and romanticized. I actually really, really enjoyed that part, but nothing more. And now I'm going to talk about the next few books, just really, really fast because these were quite recent reads. So you've probably listened to me yap about these already. But I also read The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door by H.G. Perry. And I gave this one 4 stars. I was actually pretty surprised because I'm not usually a fan of like fantasy and dark academia. I mean, I do enjoy it, but it's never something where I'm like, oh my god, wow. And this book wasn't really that different because I did give it 4 stars, that's why. But it did surprise me a little bit because I thought the plot was going to go one way and it actually went another way. And I really did end up enjoying where it went. But, there were some moments that were a little bit more quiet, a little bit more just boring, honestly, because the plot wasn't moving forward. I understand that the author needed to make a big time jump because, of course, the way the plot went, she really needed to kind of just give us a little bit of information of where our characters were, what they were doing, what happened to them. So I do understand that, but I was bored. Okay, I was bored because this book is a mystery book, The plot is a mystery, so I really want, the plot to just keep moving forward because I want clues. I want clues about what happened, where is the story going, what are we going to do now? And I really did enjoy, especially the last 100 pages. I do think they were amazing. And honestly, the writing of this book, stunning, 10 out of 10, just the whimsical of it all and the atmosphere that the author managed to create. 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. And I also read my first nonfiction book, which was Why I Love Horror, edited by Becky, let me check, Spratford, there we go. So it was edited by her. But this book is, a collection of 18 essays on 18 different authors just talking about why they love the genre of horror. And once again, it became repetitive because obviously when you have 18 essays talking about the same thing and the same theme, it's going to be repetitive. And that's why I gave it 3.5 stars. I do enjoy horror. I am a fan of horror, but I'm not, that into it. I'm not really a fanatic. So I do think if you are a fanatic for horror and you truly love this genre, I think you're going to enjoy this book much more than I did because you do have so much to learn. And I did learn a lot about why people even enjoy horror in the first place, why it drew me in as well. But like I said, because we have 18 authors talking about their inspirations, why they love horror, or how they started writing horror, why they just really feel at home with this genre, it becomes repetitive. And that's just what it felt like. And that's why it just could not be a 5-star. And last but not least, I did read The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, and this one, 3 stars, 3.5. I don't really know what to say, other than, it's just what it was meant. The main thing about thrillers to me is the plot twist, and although I did not see this plot twist coming, it wasn't a good plot twist. It just really wasn't a good plot twist. I did think it was very cheap because that's the thing, a good plot twist, it's something that we are expecting as the reader, but it's something that we are expecting with a little bit of a twist to it because the author does need to give us clues. It cannot be something pulled out of thin air, and that's exactly how I felt like with this plot twist in The Silent Patient. I was just like, really? This is it? Like, I don't really know what much to say. It just was something unexpected, of course, but it was something unexpected because it came out of thin air. So that's why it was just a 3.5 stars. And I did enjoy the talk about mental health and how trauma can really affect us, especially trauma during childhood. It really focuses on that. And honestly, the more that I do grow up, the more I see that my childhood, it really hits you. I'm telling you, like, as an adult, it really hits you and you start realizing why you have certain triggers, you have certain behaviors, just certain, tics about you and quirks about you, because mostly it comes from your childhood. And I really did like that conversation. But then again, the plot twist just really disappointed me. And these were all of the books I read so far in 2026. And as you can tell, I always have flaws and stuff to point out, which is a little bit sad. I am currently reading Empire of Silence, and I am filming a reading vlog for that one. So I'm not going to speak too much about it. But unfortunately, it's also not going to be a 5 stars for me. But there is one book that might be a 5 stars, and I'm not going to say which one it is. If you want to know, go and watch my previous reading vlog because I do talk about that book. I am absolutely loving it. I see no flaws in it whatsoever so far, and I'm 30% through, so fingers crossed that it's going to stay that way because I don't know, like, this year has been very strange. I do want to read more outside of my comfort zone, especially outside of fantasy. Not that I don't like fantasy. I will always love that genre. It has a special place in my heart, always until the day I die, but I do think I was a little bit burnt out, and I just read too much, too much fantasy, and everything was just feeling the same. All the stories were feeling the same, the characters, the plots, everything, and I was just losing, it was losing that magic for me, which is something that you don't want to happen, especially with fantasy where everything should be whimsical and magical. So I really started to read outside of my comfort zone, and although I am enjoying that, it does seem hard to, give 5 stars because of that, because a thriller to me is never going to be as good as a fantasy book. And I know some people like to rate, different different genres a different way, but I don't really like doing that. I just, I used to do that, but then my boyfriend and we had a debate about it, and honestly, I do agree with him. I do think that it doesn't really make sense, to have a different rating, because books are books at the end of the day, and I do understand that they are trying different things and different audiences, but I do think, it's just unrealistic for me to say, oh my god, I'm going to love this thriller more than I love The Lord of the Rings. I'm not, I'm just not, that's just not going to happen. So, and the same thing can be said for a person that has, horror as a favorite genre. A Stephen King book will always be better than a thriller, for example. Of course, I couldn't have expected a lot of 5 stars, but I'm telling you, I'm a little bit sad, because it does feel like I don't really know what my taste is anymore. I don't really understand what I like, what I don't like, why aren't the books hitting? But like I said, that one book that I'm reading right now, it might be the answer. It might be the answer, folks, and I have to stick with this because, oh my god, I'm so excited for it. Like, I just really love being obsessed with books, and lately, that just has not been happening. So I'm just very excited for the book that I'm reading. Fingers crossed, like I said, that it is a 5-star all the way to the end. But let me know down below all of the books that you've read throughout the year. How many books? How many books have you read? Which ones were your favorites so far? Have you read any of the books I mentioned in this video? Please let me know everything down below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it does help my channel out a lot, and it gives me a lot of motivation and validation to continue filming these videos for you guys. And I will see you on my next video. Bye!